What's up, good people? Today I'm talking with Valerie Red Horse Mohl about the tips, tricks, and secrets every social entrepreneur needs to know to shortcut their way to success. And specifically, we're going to be talking about how social entrepreneurs can use content marketing to get better results faster. And so before I begin, I just wanted to share a little bit about you. And you go by Val, right? Is
Yes,
that okay? Okay, all right. So
absolutely.
right, and you have an extensive background, so I just wanted to share a little bit about that because I think a lot of people will appreciate that. So Val is the executive director of Social Venture Circle, which equips entrepreneurs, investors, and capacity builders with connections, money, and expertise in order to create businesses that drive the next economy, which the organization describes as one that is regenerative, equitable, and prosperous for all, right? And then Valerie is of Cherokee ancestry. She has more than 30 years of in-depth experience in the financial services and investment banking industry. And over that time has managed, raised, and structured over $3 billion in capital for institutional clients. She's an accomplished filmmaker. She has been inducted into the National Association of Women Business Owners Hall of Fame. That's awesome. And she teaches a class at Stanford on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship for social impact and racial equity. And she's also married to former NFL player Kurt Mohl. So I'm sure you have a lot of stories to tell, right? and, and I think did he play for the Raiders back in the day?
My husband was drafted to the Raiders in 1981 with Howie Long. And what's interesting is just like you did that whole resume, most people will stop at that and then say, can we talk about your husband? So
Right,
I'm
right.
used to my social chairman.
Yes. So we're not going to talk about.
He is my business partner too.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so I promise we won't be talking about football here. We'll be talking about social entrepreneurship. So, right. So, okay. So, welcome, Val. The questions that I had, like I said, you have an extensive background with just the social entrepreneurship space, social impact, and so you have a lot of experience on what it takes to succeed. And what I do for my business is called Community Simple. I provide a content marketing service for social entrepreneurs who are trying to grow their presence online and just be successful, right? So I wanted to just tap into your expertise just with a few questions. So I think I wanted to first start off by just, I read a little bit more of your background, but could you just tell me a little bit more about yourself in terms of just your background and experience in the social impact space?
Sure. I mean, my journey to come into this space, which is a very clearly defined space around social impact, and it's an exciting space for me. But my journey has been a little circuitous to get here. I feel as if I've been involved in social impact my entire life, but until recently with SVC, I haven't been able to say I'm actually in that sector and I'm doing something with intentionality, and that's exciting for me. So I was raised by my mother, who was actually English. My father was full-blood Cherokee, so I'm exactly half and half. But my mother was an activist, and I do remember at the age of 5 or 6 going on anti-Vietnam War marches with her. And she was very much someone who believed in standing up for what you believe in, having a voice. She's probably 5'2", but a very strong woman. And so I learned from her early on to be engaged in the world around me and to try to leave the world a better place. And so I decided at a very early age to try to do that through film, which was simply a passion of mine. I started in the fine arts with theater and then gravitated to film, ended up majoring in film and television and theater at UCLA. And that defined a lot of the direction of my life. But while I was at UCLA, I took a little day job just for extra cash, and it turned out that I was working for Mike Milken, who was I guess some people call him the junk bond king, but basically taught me leverage finance and high yield debt. And I was working for the #1 investment bank at the time. They had some issues down the road, but bottom line, I learned an awful lot about finance and deal structuring and loved it. And so here I had sort of film and finance, very different industries and ended up going into both. And I was always very entrepreneurial, as was my husband. And I married my husband very early. We've been together 40 years. So we got married in college. And we started businesses. And so I started the film business and I started the finance business and investment bank. I've worked a lot with my community, tribal nations. I saw that as a gap. And along the way, we also had a lot of service ministries. We're very involved in our church, and we would see needs around housing and youth and elder care, and we would start different nonprofit philanthropic ventures. And so if you fast forward to last year, I reached a place where I felt, the through line was working with people and trying to make a difference in the world through film, through finance, through philanthropy, and how did they all intersect and how could I actually do more? And when I had the opportunity to interview to be the executive director of Social Venture Circle, it really was the culmination of all of those things coming together in a much broader way, actually a global scale. And so now I'm just thrilled to be a part of an organization that for 4 decades they've been around, actually have been really focused on business as a force for good and how you connect people and really make the world a different place and a better place through business. And I'm just couldn't be more excited to be where I'm at.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And obviously, like you said, you have done business and you've worked with lots of organizations over the years. And like you said, you're inspired by your mother, who's an activist. I think it's the same for me. Both of my parents were inspired by they went to San Jose State, in heyday, so they were really inspired by that type of activism.
Spartans.
Yeah. And I don't know, that just makes me think like, so obviously there was a point where you realized that even though, because like you said, finance and sort of social entrepreneurship, they don't always go hand in hand, or they're not always in the same conversation. But like, when did you realize that you could actually integrate social change into any business model? Because I know that's something that you're really passionate about.
Well, I think it started with my work with tribes, and I represented over 100 tribes in my 30 career as an investment banker. That was my primary sector that I worked with. And what I had to realize with the tribal nations, our biggest industry is tribal gaming. And that in and of itself is not a social enterprise. Gaming, and in fact, by the rest of the world, is often considered a sin industry. And its own set of issues. But for tribal nations, it was one industry that actually helped them expand with their economic development and become sort of on an even playing field with the rest of the world. And we would work to take the revenue realized from gaming, whether it liked it or not or agreed with it, and then we'd look at how can we generate even more jobs and a greater economy, and look at things around culture and heritage and energy preservation and really progressive types of businesses. One tribe that I'm particularly passionate about still is creating from their gaming revenue, creating like a wellness center that could actually bring a healing technique for opiate addiction, which is a big problem for them and the world at large. So it was clear to me that I was in the impact space because of the work with tribes. There was such a great need, and it really did mirror some of the problems that we have in the greater community, and finding solutions to those problems through business and economic development was super exciting, but I was in a very sort of siloed sector. So I think to be able to take it into a broader sector is exciting, but I definitely was involved with it for many years working with the tribes.
That's interesting because, the reason why I'm really passionate about this space too is because of perceptions, right? Like I used to be a journalist and I worked in the nonprofit sector, right? So, and it's really what's the difference with me between like nonprofit and for-profit is I think on the nonprofit side, you're focusing a lot on changing people's perspectives. And, the situation you just described with, the tribal nations getting into gaming, but using that for social good, I think is a good example, right? So this is kind of like a sidebar, but how do you think social entrepreneurs can change people's perspective, maybe better than for-profit businesses?
Well, I think the old phrase is follow the money, and you actually do have more of an impact when you are a for-profit business. You can move the needle, you can make more impact, you can affect more change. philanthropy, there's a place for that in our world. And I always have a soft spot for philanthropy and groups that come in and help in disaster times. And I myself still have the nonprofit that helps in kind of rare circumstances. What I found myself with my own little nonprofit, we were putting a Band-Aid on an issue that needed a deeper solution and a long-term systemic sustainable solution. And economic development and business that really creates economic growth that could be the solution. So I'm not saying that there isn't a place for philanthropy. Again, in my heart, I will always be involved in philanthropy, but where I see true change, what we call the next economy, has to come through the movement of those capital and the business model. The one piece of education, and this might be segueing to another topic, but the one piece of education that I find myself doing over and over again to the broader community is social impact in business is not concessionary. It doesn't have to be. There is philanthropic ventures where you are giving money because there is a model that does not make money, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about business that can show a financial return as well as an impact return. And that's what our network is focused on, and we believe very sincerely in that. And yet there still is a sort of misconception that if you are making a big difference in the world and doing good, that somehow you have to give up financial return, and we would dispute that all day long.
Yeah, I love that, and I know we could continue talking about that because that's so important. So again, pulling from your experience, what's a tip that you wish someone had shared with you? When it came to like promoting your social enterprise, or any one of the organizations that you started, when you were first starting out, like what do you wish somebody would have shared with you? Because again, content marketing, in my opinion, is storytelling that sells. It needs to sell. It needs to, like you said, have a financial return, but you also have to promote it as well. You can't just, like, the money just doesn't come, or the authority or visibility doesn't just come. So what do you take on that?
Well, I have had some great mentors in my careers, and I would say the number one mentor I've had in my film career is, I believe she's a household name in Hollywood, Ellen Hurd. She's the current executive producer of The Walking Dead, and she created the Terminator series, and she is an amazing producer. And I've had the pleasure of having her be the executive producer on all of my, or most of my documentaries. And what I learned from her is truly the art of character-driven storytelling. You really get that character down and tell that story, that delivers the message more powerfully than anything else. And if you think of her films, like with Terminator, the waitress, who basically saved the world, and she also had very strong female characters at a time when that wasn't done. So it was just such a role model to me. And what I think I did wrong is I kept my film career in a silo in LA, and then my finance career was, on Wall Street, and they were very separate industries for me. And now that I'm at SVC and I judge pitch contests and I look at what social entrepreneurs are trying to do, I'm realizing storytelling and film is an integral part of raising capital. You actually do intersect. And it's not so much to me about film that's like advertising film and just straight media information exchange. It is that storytelling piece. And if I see something where I care about a character and it's a soft sell, I am more inclined to buy that product or to find out more about what that is trying to tell me than if I'm just sold something blatantly. And so I think what I learned older that I wish maybe I had learned when I was younger, that my choices actually blend together and are very important to each other, that you don't want to keep your storytelling in a box and then your finance in a box.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I feel like that's the dilemma of every social entrepreneur. Like, you want to make a big social impact. You also want to make money, but there might be some perceptions about money. Because I know it's just, it's how we're raised. Like, I was raised like, like I said, my parents were activists, so I kind of came up with the understanding, like, there's some flaws with capitalism. You don't want to idolize capitalism, but yet we live in America. So you want to, and it takes money to do things. So I like how you're able to balance both and realize that they're, like you said, they're they're not mutually exclusive, right? You know, so appreciate that. Okay, so okay, building again upon your experience, like what interesting trick maybe have you figured out or discovered over the years that would help social entrepreneurs approach digital marketing as a necessity to their success? And I think what I'm getting at there is like what I find is you know, social entrepreneurs are trying to get their social enterprises off the ground, and sometimes they feel like you know, they ask the question, is content marketing or digital marketing worth the investment? You know, because there's so many things that they have to balance. So what's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting because one of our very valuable board members at SVC is someone, well, actually two of our board members specialize in content marketing, branding, all around social impact and social media, and helped us ourselves with our campaign after the merger. I think it's an essential part of any business plan, and if anyone ignores it, it's a big mistake. It takes different forms and shapes depending on what your product is and who your audience is, and you have to do a lot of thinking and have sort of a streamlined trajectory. This is what we're doing in terms of the market and the segment and the audience, but that marketing and that content and that plan is essential. And what I've seen with social entrepreneurs, because I judge pitches probably, I don't know, once a week. I mean, I'm out there a lot, and so does our network. We actually do a huge review, and we have our own pitch sessions. And I would say the one thing that's really, really important right now, especially if you're pitching to impact investors for capital, is to be able to articulate that impact. And sometimes articulating your impact is more challenging than articulating your financial returns, because with financial returns, you're able to have a standardization of, okay, 5-year pro forma projections. What is my total addressable market? What is my gross revenue versus my EBITDA? I mean, these are things that are already established, whether you're an impact entity or not.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder to look at, is there a standardization on articulating your impact and your impact goals as well as your current impact? And we have found that the companies that get invested are those that really are able to articulate specifically their current impact and their impact goals and what segment of the population, doing something a little bit different, again, around impact, not just in their marketing strategy for their product, but, you know, and it crosses all sectors. So impact is not a sector and it's not an asset class. It really is a thought-driven strategy of making intentional impact alongside your financial return. And it would be different if you're an education tech company from a medical company. There's, again, it's food and ag, it doesn't matter, but that articulation of that impact kind of comes back to that content and marketing. And again, is it a story? Is it following one customer whose life improved, one family who found affordable housing, whatever it is, that has to be articulated. And that's where I think the business you're in becomes very integral and essential to social entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so like the examples that you're talking about in terms of articulating the impact would be, like you're saying, sharing that story and how to track it, something like that, right? That's interesting.
Yeah, and kind of going back to my Hollywood example, finding the story that isn't just a bunch of facts and figures. So as an example, one of the companies in our network that was able to find funding through our network, they make amputee prosthetics.
Okay.
And they're newer, better, more mobile, able to run and climb and all of that type of thing. And they make them for commercial enterprises like first world doctors and hospitals, but they also make them for third world countries where having a prosthetic could mean the difference between having a job and being able to go to school if you don't have a limb. And their story didn't just, they have facts and figures embedded in their pitch deck, but they had a picture of a little boy, you know, whose life has been dramatically changed because of it. And that had so much of an impact on us.
Yeah.
It's not to say that that's all you can do. You can't just tell that story, then not have everything else to back it up. Like, here's your 5-year pro forma projections, and this is how much money you're making in your management team and all of that. But to have an impact story, which goes to that content marketing and media piece, just grabs you. And it's like a movie. You want that first 5 minutes to really grab the audience. And I think that's the same with an impact company pitch.